Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC 132 Cruz vs. Faber 2. As of shooting this video, UFC Live Marquardt vs. Story has yet to take place, so there's nothing to report there. The UFC 132 will take place on July 2nd, 2011, live from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. It will feature 5 main card fights spanning 5 different divisions. And I have to say that the undercard fights are some of the best we have seen to date. On the undercard, we have Melvin Guillard versus Shane Roller, George Soteropoulos versus Rafael Dos Anjos, Brian Bowles versus Takeo Mizugaki, Brad Tavares versus Aaron Simpson, and Anthony Njokuani versus Andre Winner. For the first time ever, I will be providing predictions for all 5 of the undercard fights, both on the scroll bar and in a brief synopsis, along with obviously the 5 main card matchups, including our bantamweight title matchup. This event has the potential to be one of the best cards of the year, so let's get to the predictions. Now I'm going to provide predictions for each of the 5 undercard fights. I'm assuming each one will be shown in some fashion, whether it be on Spike or whether it be on Facebook, and we'll find out soon enough which they are. So let's kick it off with Melvin Guillard versus Shane Roller. Now Shane Roller picked up a come-from-behind victory over Thiago Tavares in his last fight via knockout after struggling with Thiago's striking, while Melvin Guillard's issues with being taken down have seemingly disappeared since joining Greg Jackson's camp. Guillard's ability to jump in and out will keep him away from the top-level wrestler, and if Roller had issues with Tavares' striking, he will have even more problems with Guillard's. So I've got Guillard by stoppage. Moving next, George Soteropoulos versus Rafael Dos Anjos. Both fighters will be looking to rebound from defeats in their last appearance. Soteropoulos was unable to get the fight to the mat against Siver, while Dos Anjos suffered a jaw injury and was forced to tap out versus Clay Guida. Now both guys are BJJ black belts, but on the mat I give George the advantage. If the fight stays standing, Dos Anjos has shown much improved striking skills, especially his inside leg kick, so I give him the edge there. The Brazilian gave Clay Guida all he could handle in their fight. His takedown defense is very good at 73%, and we saw what happened when George couldn't get Siver to the mat. I'm calling an upset, Rafael Dos Anjos to defeat George Soteropoulos by decision. Next, Brian Bowles will take on Takeo Mizugaki. Both fighters had success in their UFC debuts. Brian Bowles has never really been defeated, with his only loss to the result of a broken hand against Cruz. Mizugaki has alternated wins and losses. With every win, he has moved up in competition for his next fight and suffered a defeat to Miguel Torres, Scott Jorgensen, and Uriah Faber. I expect that Bowles will simply be too much for Mizugaki everywhere this fight goes, and I have Brian Bowles by submission. Brad Tavares versus Aaron Simpson. Simpson may have lost against both Leben and Mark Munoz, but there were moments in each of those fights that show what he's capable of. Tavares, on the other hand, stopped Phil Baroni after being tagged himself. I like Simpson to use his wrestling to get himself back on track. He will need to avoid trading with Tavares, but I see the A-Train grinding out a decision victory. And now we have Anthony Njokuani versus Andre Winner. Now don't blink, because this fight could be quick, as they are 2 of the fastest fighters in the UFC today. Both fighters' downfalls have been against grapplers, but lucky for them, neither guy possesses the type of grappling skills that should concern the other. Anthony lost his last fight to Edson Barbosa despite outstriking him almost 2-1. Winner 2 in a row, most notably after being knocked down by Dennis Siver and then submitted. Without threat of a takedown, Njokuani will have success on his feet, especially with his kicks. So I have Anthony Njokuani by stoppage, and those are my 5 preliminary fight predictions. In the opening bout of the main card in the lightweight division, we have Dennis Siver, 18-7, taking on 13-5 handsome Matt Wiman. Siver has won 3 in a row and 7 of his last 8, while Wiman has also won 3 consecutive and 7 of his last 9. I have Siver as the favorite at $1.65 and Wiman the dog at $2.25. Now entering this bout, Matt Wiman has a huge opportunity to advance his standings in the division. Siver's coming off the biggest win of his career over top contender George Soteropoulos, so if Wiman were to earn a win here, it would really launch him up the rankings. In Wyman's last bout, he looked fantastic versus Cole Miller. He fought a very rapid yet controlled pace, effectively overwhelming Miller, not allowing him to ever get started. He showed marked improvement in his striking, putting together decent combinations and working a lot of kicks. He has always had big power in his right hand, which he stopped Thiago Tavares with, but he does have a tendency to get a little wild with his exchanges. His mat game also was far better than his previous outings. He seemed to simplify things against Miller, using vicious ground and pound and pummeling Miller with hammer fists and elbows. He was able to stack him, control him, and when it came right down to it, out-muscle him. Now, Dennis Siver is a world-class kickboxer with incredible technique and solid power. He's an accurate striker, can counter-strike, which he did perfectly in his bout with Andre Winner. He has a vicious left hook, which he dropped George Soteropoulos with. He will often throw it, following a quick right hand. Along with his boxing, His kicks are a game changer. He is well known for his turning side kick that has stopped more than one opponent, but he's capable of delivering devastating kicks from his front leg. The reason they are so effective is because of technique. He has minimal windup, which doesn't allow his opponent much time to react. Siver is a talented striker, but he has an impressive 9 submissions and shown excellent takedown defense against Soteropoulos. This will certainly be put to the test against Wiman, as Matt will aggressively pursue takedowns and has completed almost 50% over his 10-fight stint inside the octagon. Now, neither fighter has proven unbeatable. Siver was defeated by Gray Maynard, as Gray was able to put his wrestling to Dennis and put him down and controlled him on the mat, something Wiman will look to duplicate. Matt Wiman, on the other hand, suffered a defeat against Sam Stout because Stout won the majority of the striking exchanges using straight punches to combat Wyman's wild looping strikes. And secondly, Stout was able to both defend the takedowns and get up when he was put down. Siver's takedown defense ranks him at 74%, and the show he put on in his bout has me wondering if Wiman will be able to get the fight to the mat. If he can't, and this becomes a pure striking contest, Siver will have a 3-inch reach advantage and the superior technique. Wiman likes to push forward aggressively, but with Siver's counter-striking, it should help combat this, and if he was able to connect with the uber-fast Andre Winner, I would expect he will be able to hit Wiman. My only concern for Siver is the weight cut. He had issues with it in his last bout, slowing him down a little in the later stages of the fight. If Wiman is able to push the pace, he could wear down Dennis and steal the fight late. I think this fight has the fight of the night potential, and Matt Wiman is a tough guy to finish, but I'll take Dennis Siver to defeat Matt Wiman by decision. We now move to the welterweight division as 26-5 Carlos the Natural Born Killer Condit meets 14-0-1 Dong Young Stun Gun Kim. Kim has won 3 in a row dating back to a no contest, while Condit has also secured 3 straight victories coming into this matchup. I think the betting odds will be close. I have Kim as a slight favorite at $1.75 and Condit at $1.95. Now, this fight has title shot implications written all over it. Looking first at Condit, he has shown the ability to win fights wherever and whenever. He has 12 career knockouts and 13 career submissions. No matter where you take the fight, he is lethal. He had a perfect run in WEC as the welterweight champ, submitting John Alessio and Ryan Jensen, and his one-punch knockout of Dan Hardy proved how dangerous he is on the feet. Even more impressive has been his ability to persevere in difficult matchups and rally late for the victory. Against Jake Ellenberger, he struggled early, got tagged several times, and was put on his back and beat up. Against Rory McDonald, he was taken down multiple times as well and lost the fight from start to almost finish. Against Ellenberger, he was able to rally back and steal a split decision as his opponent began to fade. And against Rory McDonald, he was able to stop the young kid in the waning moments of the 3rd round. Now, this is one of 2 defining aspects of this matchup. Condit has had issues with getting off to slow starts and then rallying late, which I attribute to his incredible heart and ridiculous cardio. When Carlos gets taken down, he constantly works off his back to force his opponent to defend, and this will wear guys out. Kim, on the other hand, has been shown to have issues with endurance, especially when he's forced to constantly engage. Against Matt Brown and Nate Diaz, Kim dominated early, but began to fade as the fight progressed. Against Brown, he wore down partway through the 2nd round, but Kim snuck out a split decision win. Against Diaz, Stun Gun dominated the fight early, which proved enough to earn the win, but Nate's superior cardio and constant work ethic resulted in Kim fading at the end, noticeably fatigued. Carlos has shown that he can fight in a manner similar to Kim's past opponents, attacking off his back and forcing Kim to constantly work, draining his energy. If this scenario stood alone, then it would make this fight much easier to pick, but that's not the case. Carlos Condit's takedown defense calculates out at 46%, not the greatest, but we have seen worse. Looking closer, since joining the UFC, he has had 3 very close fights. We talked about Ellenberger and McDonald, 2 fights that he could have easily lost, and the fight he did lose to Martin Kampmann. In each of those matchups, he suffered multiple takedowns, 3 each against Jake and Rory, and 5 against Martin. Now, even though Carlos is aggressive off his back, the fact that he gets taken down so frequently is concerning, as we have seen how influential this can be for a judge's decision. Kim has averaged 3.5 takedowns per fight in the UFC, topping out at 6 against Amir Sadallah. Stun Gun is a strong guy, and when he gets a hold of you, he is putting you on your back. He has never been submitted, and I attribute this to his ability to power through sub attempts. Diaz tried several in their fight, and rewatching that, Kim was simply able to push through them. So one must wonder which scenario wins out. I could easily see Kim taking Carlos down and grinding out a decision win, but I could also see Carlos defending off his back, Kim gassing, and Carlos earning a late come-from-behind victory. If the fight was to stay standing, Condit is the superior striker, but that is a huge if. If Kim fades, Carlos has the power and aggression to put him away. If Carlos is unable to defend the takedown, Kim will be able to put him down and keep him there. Carlos has an offensive guard, but he also uses the mission control position quite well to neutralize his opponent's top game. Kim can counteract this by posturing up and attacking, which he has done in previous fights. This is a very hard fight to call, but I think the more likely scenario is Kim taking down Condit and controlling him on the mat, then Condit rallying and stopping him late. So my prediction is Dong Young Kim to defeat Carlos Condit by decision. Continuing to move up the weight classes to the light heavyweight division, the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz, 16-8-1, will battle 12-1 Ryan Darth Bader. Bader is looking to rebound from his first career defeat against Jon Jones, while Tito has lost 3 in a row and is winless in his last 5. I have Bader as a significant favorite, paying out $1.10, and Tito the dog at $4.35. Looking at the veteran first, there is no denying that Tito is entering the final stages of his career. He hasn't picked up a win since 2006, winless over a 5-fight span. But during that run, Tito has taken on a solid list of 205-pounders, including former champions Chuck Liddell, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, and Forrest Griffin, along with his most recent opponent Matt Hamill. So to say the least, he hasn't been taking the easy road. In fact, he fought Evans to a draw for being penalized a point, lost a split decision to Griffin, and almost caught Machida in a miracle triangle at the end of their bout. So one might think that Tito is due for an upturn in luck. Ryan Bader, on the other hand, has only experienced defeat once, which happened to be in his last bout, which happened to be against the current light heavyweight champion, Jon Jones. For the first time in his career, Bader was outclassed, dominated, and submitted in a one-sided battle. It will be interesting to see how Bader responds from this defeat. A defeat that was further complicated by the fact that Jones was granted a title shot during the post-fight interview, probably leaving a bad taste in Ryan's mouth. I would expect that Bader will look to reestablish himself as a top contender at 205 with a dominating performance against a veteran fighter. Physically, these two stack up almost identical, same reach, same weight, and almost the same height, with Tito standing slightly taller. The most telling disparity is their age difference. Tito at 36, 8 years older than his opponent, would probably stand a much better chance of winning the fight if the Ortiz of 6-7 years ago showed up. Despite this recent defeat, Ryan Bader is really in the prime of his career. He's an NCAA Division I wrestler, averaging 4 takedowns a fight over his last 4 wins prior to the Jones loss. For my last Bader prediction, I picked up on the fact that he struggles to score takedowns later in a fight, as he seems to expend a lot of energy early. Bader has knockout power on the feet and on the ground. He stopped Keith Jardine with a vicious right hand and showed some serious ground and pound against Little Nog, stacking up the Brazilian and pounding away. Bader's stand-up is improving. He has a tendency to come forward wildly and has issues with distance, as we saw in the Jones fight. This last point won't be an issue against Tito, as Ortiz and Bader have an identical reach. Tito's striking isn't at the elite level, but it has got the job done for the most part. Tito had his greatest success against Hamill when he came forward, pushing the pace, mixing up his strikes, and not allowing Hamill to set up. During Ortiz's current losing streak, he has been badly outstruck by his opponents, including a 70-24 count in favor of Forrest. Tito is at his best when he can get his opponent to the mat. Early in his career, he dominated opponents with his takedowns and ground and pound. But of late, he has found it more and more difficult to get his adversary on their back. In his defeats versus Machida and Hamill, he had 0 takedowns, and even more telling, Hamill was able to put Ortiz down 3 times. The Hamill-Ortiz fight is probably the most telling about this matchup. Tito mounted limited offense against Hamill, and I see Bader having a comparable skill set to Hamill, being slightly larger and therefore having the ability to duplicate Hammer's success. Tito has been a tough guy to finish over his career, but I expect Bader to dominate this fight from start to finish, so my prediction is Ryan Bader to defeat Tito Ortiz by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, middleweights Vanderlei the Axe Murderer Silva, 33-10-1, and 21-7 Chris the Crippler Leben will square off. Leben is looking to rebound from a knockout defeat against Brian Stan, while Silva is returning from an over a year layoff where he defeated Michael Bisping. On to this fight lineup with Silva as the favorite around $1.55 and Leben the dog at $2.25. Now, this is an intriguing matchup. If this fight happened a few years ago, I would be expecting a wild slugfest, but both guys have made changes to their fighting styles. Both Vanderlei and Chris have gotten away from their brawling nature, instead opting for a much more relaxed approach, but I would be way off base to suggest that they won't revert back to their wild aggressive manners during this fight. Silva's long layoff of over 16 months following knee surgery is a concern, but Vanderlei has an incredible work ethic, and if anyone is going to overcome such a layoff, it will be him. The Chris Leben hype train got derailed in his last bout following a first-round knockout at the hands of Brian Stan. Leben's granite chin, previously only knocked out by the 185-pound King, failed him on that night. I took Leben to win that matchup as I felt that he could turn that bout into an ugly brawl and catch Stan with one, which was far from the case. As I already mentioned, Leben isn't the brawler he used to be, but when push comes to shove, he has a tendency to revert back to that style. Against Yoshihiro Akiyama, he landed leg kicks early, stayed patient, and used the clinch to attack with uppercuts and body shots. As the fight progressed, and Leben tired and began to take more damage, he reverted back to his old style of wading forward, throwing wild, looping punches, incredibly dangerous, but not the greatest technique. Vanderlei's last fight against Michael Bisping was probably his best all-around performance in the octagon. He showed patience, only using aggression in small doses before backing away and composing himself. Vanderlei's head movement was excellent, avoiding a lot of the strikes thrown by his opponent, and he outlanded Bisping 42-32. Finally, the most important aspect of that fight was Silva's cardio. He fought a full 3 rounds with no drop-off in performance against one of the best conditioned fighters in the UFC. Vanderlei has been knocked out in the past, but if you look at the names on that list, Rampage, Krokop, Henderson, and Belfort, you have to wonder if Leben has what it takes to stop the axe-murderer. Leben has had issues with being taken down. Both Aaron Simpson and Akiyama were able to put Leben down and control him. While Silva is not known for his takedowns, against both Rich Franklin and Bisping, he was able to catch a leg and complete the takedown and spend significant time on top. As I already mentioned, Leben will throw leg kicks, and I think Vanderlei will be able to catch one and take Leben down, which could give him a round. If Silva stays patient and opts for technique over violence, this fight is his to win. Leben likes to get drawn into striking battles, but he becomes vulnerable to technique when he stops thinking. Looking at 2 of their most recent fights, Silva was able to handle a high-quality striker in Michael Bisping, while in my opinion, Leben was on his way to defeat against Akiyama until he pulled out the late submission. If Akiyama hadn't have gassed, he probably wins that fight. If Silva can put on a similar performance to the Bisping victory, he should have similar success here. Vanderlei will need to watch out for Leben's power, but I have Vanderlei Silva to defeat Chris Leben by decision. In the main event of the evening, the UFC Bantamweight title will be on the line as the champion 17-1 Dominic Cruz looks to avenge his only career defeat against the challenger and former WEC featherweight champ 25-4 the California Kid Uriah Faber. Faber has won 2 in a row, while Cruz, making his UFC debut, has won 8 in a row. On the books, I have the champ as the favorite at $1.70 and the challenger at $2.05. The first meeting between Cruz and Faber took place back in 2007, with Faber's WEC featherweight title on the line. The bout was a short one as Cruz attempted an early takedown and inadvertently stuck his head into Uriah's crushing guillotine, and that was that. Since that matchup, both fighters have gone their separate ways, but ultimately wound up in the same place, UFC 132. In the striking department, I give the edge to Cruz. Both guys are fast and have power in their punches, but Cruz is more technically sound and offensively and defensively. Faber likes to throw a lot of single strikes. He will attack with multiple strikes, but they are disjointed and they don't really flow together. He's an unorthodox striker, incorporating elbows and jumping knees. He throws a big looping punches and has power in his right. He maintains a low stance, which keeps his opponent on the alert for flash takedowns. Defensively, he circles away to avoid taking damage, but he has a tendency to hold his hands low. Now, Faber did this against Wiman, hoping to lure him in, but against Cruz, this could be a mistake. Faber's striking success is based on his speed, which is fine until he gets paired up with a fighter that's faster than him, as we saw in the Aldo fight. Cruz could present similar issues in the speed department. Cruz is the total package: fast footwork, good head movement, and he attacks from all angles. The movement he uses gives his opponents fits as they try to find openings to attack, and on top of all this, even if they land, Cruz has an iron chin. Cruz's cardio is top level as he can fight bell to bell with no drop off. He has power in his hands, stringing together multiple combinations of jabs and hooks, and Cruz utilizes a crippling low kick that can really take a toll. His counter-striking is another aspect of his attack, as he is able to deliver strikes at the precise moment his opponent pushes forward, which can really back up an adversary off. Moving to the ground, Faber brings solid ground and pound in a submission game that has racked up 13 wins. His shot is hard to defend against, but if he's unable to shoot in for a takedown, he will clinch, attack, and quickly drop down for a single or double leg. When he gets the fight to the mat, he will break a fighter down. He constantly works on top, he stacks his adversary and drops elbows, and he also likes to pick his opponent up and use a short slam. Now, much like his struggles with Aldo being faster than himself, if Faber is unable to score the takedown, this too can disrupt his attack. He was unable to take Aldo down in that fight. In the rematch with Mike Brown, Brown took him down 9 times to Faber's 2. And finally against Wiman, Faber was unable to put Eddie on his back early on, which essentially cost him round 1. Faber's probably better known for his grappling, but statistically the champ has more success on the mat. Cruz has completed an impressive 29 of 45 takedowns at 64% success rate, including 6 takedowns per fight in his matchups with Scott Jorgensen and 2 battles with Joseph Benavidez, both talented wrestlers in their own right. Adding to this is his impressive takedown defense, which clocks in at 84% of takedowns defended. Again, this can be attributed to his fast footwork and making him hard to defend against and hard to grab hold of. Now, I keep going back to the Wiman-Faber matchup, but I think this is the key to understanding this match. Just like Wiman in round 1, I expect to see Cruz stuffing takedowns and winning the striking exchanges, but this time it will be spread out over a longer period of time. Dominic's takedown defense and overall elusiveness will force Faber to stand in exchange with the champ. Cruz's superior speed and technique will make him the better striker, and I don't expect the champ to falter in the later stages, so my prediction is Dominic Cruz to retain his title by unanimous decision over Uriah Faber. Alright, welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown. Two things I want to touch upon for this one. First is the preliminaries. As I mentioned, they're solid preliminaries. The UFC Live on Versus preliminaries are excellent as well. And I know they like to show things on Facebook, and the quality of the feed was much better for the last show. But I think the UFC needs to find some way to get these on regular television so the mass audience can see them. Because I know a lot of people do not have Facebook and really want to see these fights. I think an interesting way would be put them on their own separate pay-per-view, charge $5 or $10, you know, not too much, like $5 I think would be respectable. Put them on a pay-per-view, and that way if people want to order them, they can. Or if the UFC gets their own network, they can put them all on television that way. Either way, these fights need to be shown, because the more and more talent they add to the UFC, the more and more talent's going to be fighting on these preliminaries. Secondly, weight cuts. I find it very interesting. There's a lot of fighters that are dropped down divisions or making their debut in recent or coming up or recently. We had Kenny Flory make his weight cut. Mark Hort's doing his. Stevenson and Tyson Griffin on the preliminaries UFC Live. Here we have Uriah Faber fighting in the main event. I don't know what exactly that signals, but I'm very curious to see how these guys perform. Some people might think it signals the end of a career, or at least a downturn, as they struggle to succeed in their natural weight class and want to go down one. Either way, I wish all these guys the best of luck, and we'll see, what happens and how if this trend continues of cutting weight and getting down a division. That's Kamikaze Countdown. Alrighty, now before wrapping up, I'd just like to take a breath, as this was my final prediction during a span of roughly 1 month where I did 6 shows, 5 UFC and 1 Strikeforce, and so far I've averaged an 80% correct rate in that span. And, those are my predictions. You get the 5 main card predictions plus the 5 undercard fights. And again, I'm so excited for this card. It should be excellent start to finish. I know I picked a lot of decisions, and I'm looking forward to UFC Live this weekend. Hopefully we can keep things rolling in the right direction. Make sure you turn into my UFC 132 post-fight podcast. I will touch upon everything that went down, and I will probably revisit UFC Live and the last Strikeforce event. If you have any questions, topics, opinions you'd like to hear on the post-fight, send me a message and I'll be sure to drop your name and mention what you had to say. That's all for now. It's been a busy couple of weeks with a short break in July and then another rapid schedule in August. Thank you for watching, and I'm out of here.